What is going on, everybody? My name is Sam. Most of you guys, however, know me from the Discord as Fatty. And tonight I am here to talk to you a little bit more about speed, or the gamma of gamma. Before we get into that, though, I wanted to give a big shout out to everybody over at TraderLink, but especially a big thank you to Geo and Sheen and the man behind the scenes, Nick, for putting all these Greeks together, getting all this information all in one place, and developing platform that I think is just pretty incredible. So big thank you to all of you guys. So up next, let's chat about speed. So D gamma, D spot, otherwise known as speed, is the sensitivity of an option's gamma to changes in the underlying. But what does that mean for us as options traders? It means that contracts with a higher speed exposure have the potential to rapidly gain value. If you take a peek at this table by Natenberg, you can check out the equation for it, but then you can also check out where he believes it is maximized. And we definitely agree on that 15 to 20 or 80 to 85 delta. However, in his opinion, it is actually maximized during times of lower volatility. But after tracking speed pretty religiously for the past couple of months, it is in my opinion that speed actually is maximized during times of low VANA, which, as we know from the presentation that the boys gave yesterday, actually means higher volatility. And then he also brings up the closer to expiry the option gets, speed is maximized there as well. We definitely agree on that too. And then a gentleman by the name of Espen Hogg discusses how speed is most useful when gamma is at its maximum with respect to the underlying. So taking a peek at gamma, we can see that the closer to expiry we get, the gamma becomes stronger, the gamma becomes maximized. So with that in mind, if gamma is maximized closer to expiry, speed will only become stronger closer to expiry. So knowing this, we can pinpoint the best times to utilize speed, and it is going to be especially strong towards the end of the day as well as OPEX week. So taking a peek at VANA and speed next to each other, as I mentioned, in my opinion, speed is actually maximized during times of lower VANA, which, taking a look at this chart, you can see that is obviously going to create higher volatility. And if you look over at the speed diagram, you can visualize how speed will be the most obvious, stand out the most, and also be the strongest the closer to expiry that we get. One great thing about the bots that we utilize over at TraderLink is they give us info for 0 DTs on SPX, SPY, and QQQ, so we were able to take advantage of speed towards the end of the day as those contracts start to expire. And since we do have OPEX one time per month, and we know funds tend to load the monthly contracts versus daily or weekly, we can surmise that speed is going to be strongest during OPEX week. And if VANA is able to remain suppressed during that week, speed will only be even stronger. So in order to best go over how we trade with speed, I just wanted to walk through an example from this past Friday, which was OPEX. So here's a quick look at some of the output that the bots will give us. And if you are on TraderLink's beta right now, you know that the website is totally different. This is actually just the output from the Discord. However, it is the exact same bots, just different background. Might look a tad bit better. But taking a peek at how VANA looked off of the open, you can already see we've got some pretty low VANA surrounding spot. And so we know that VANA is compressed. So we know volatility is high. We also have speed showing us some areas of interest at 45.10, 45.40, and 45.60 on our net side in that blue box. And then if you look over to the split box with the red and green, you can see that the range that dealers are going to want to keep us in is between 45.40 and 45.60, with 45.50 having the most combined exposure. So since we are opening in the middle of the range, there's no real play to be had. However, later on, if you take a peek around 10:30, you'll notice that we are hovering towards that lower end, right around 45.40. So if you did absolutely have to take a play in the morning, which we generally advise against, but if you absolutely did have to play it, it would still be a viable trade. You could play it towards the upside using that 45-40 zone as a support, and you would be targeting the upper speed bar, which is up at 45-60. In my mind, the easiest way to understand speed is that it acts as a magnet, and the higher the exposure, the more magnetic that effect will be. So ideally, what you're going to want to see is a speed target that's far enough away from spot that you can take advantage of the movement. Now, if you take a look at the bot outputs at 2 p.m., we are still in the range outlined from this morning. However, we are hovering near the top. And knowing what we do about gamma, we know that dealers will begin hedging their positions within a 5 to 10 point range. Taking a look at that split chart, you'll see that 50 and 60 have the highest positive exposures, and that definitely outweighs the exposure down at 40. However, looking over at 40 on the net chart, you will see that there is still some interest down there. All right, so only 3 minutes later, speed is telling a much different story, right? So if you look over at the split chart, you'll see the spot positive exposure at 60 is now dropping off, and the exposure down at 40 is rapidly increasing. We now have two competing magnets at 40 and 60, but taking a closer look at the split chart, you will see that 40 is actually slightly stronger than 60. Over on net, it does appear that 40 is a little bit weaker. However, knowing that we were just up in that 60 range, within a 5-point range of 60, we know that dealers were able to begin hedging that. So knowing what I do about speed, at this point, you can take an early entry. And since we are targeting 40, we would pick the 45 strike, because it places our contracts at minimum $5 into the money. So you want to make sure, in my mind, you want to make sure you have at least $5 of intrinsic value to take advantage of. As mentioned, that early entry on the 45-45 puts at 2:04 Eastern would be roughly 245 if you take a look at the premium chart for the 45-45 puts. However, if you do prefer to wait for confirmation that 45-40 is indeed the strongest exposure for speed, you are able to wait just a little bit longer, and by 2:10 p.m. you can see that 45-40 is now firmly our highest net speed exposure strike. So you can take a late entry, or your first entry if you do like to wait for confirmation. You can take that, and at that time those 45-45s were hovering around 2.5. 4 minutes later, we have even more confirmation with 45-40 firmly in the driver's seat, and can even start to see the exposure drop off on the upside. Now, that said, our position has already gone 100% from either entry. So if you are a scalper, you're most likely already down to runners. In my mind, speed is pretty much every scalper's dream, as it does give you a slight head start on how dealers are about to hedge and where they are targeting. So although our contracts have already hit 100% gains, and many folks would tend to take profit on the way there or at that point, if you're a target trader like many of us in the Discord, you always save at least one average down, right? If not multiple. So at 2:49 p.m., about 30 minutes later, you can see that 45-50 on split and 45-60 on net do attempt to make a bit of a comeback. However, literally just 1 minute later, 45-60 loses its steam. 45-40 remains as our highest net exposure strike, at which point we would look to take our second entry, or our average down, right around 185. 6 minutes later, you can see 45-40 is still the dominant strike on our net side, and has even begun to take over on split. And taking a look back at net, you can see how much stronger and how much more exposure is sitting over at 45-40 versus the rest of the chart, right? Or versus the rest of the strikes. And at this point, our contracts are worth around $3. Taking a look over at the premium chart, for about a 40% gain. Now, again, a lot of people would be very, very happy with 40%, but that's not really what we're aiming for. We are aiming to hit our target, and we haven't hit it yet. And the reason we chose 45-45 as our strike versus 45-40 is because, in my mind, you're going to want to make sure that your contract does have at minimum $5 of intrinsic value, especially if you are planning on cash settling them. There has been many instances where speed will make its move in the in the last 1 to 2 minutes of the day. So trying to get out is tough. So if you do have that minimum of $5 of intrinsic value and you were able to buy your contracts, ideally somewhere below 2, right around 2, you're going to cash settle, and you're going to cash settle over 100%. So thanks to the help of gamma and speed, the closer that we are getting to our target, the more rapid the contracts start to move, right? The more we get paid per movement on the underlying, on SPX. And less than 15 minutes after our contracts were hovering right around 3, we have hit our target on SPX of 45.40, and our contracts are hovering around 8.6 for a gain of around 300%. In my mind, this is why knowing how strong speed will be based on OPEX and the time of day is so important. Because if you do have conviction in your strategy and you are a target over profit trader, this is the first area that you would begin looking to take profit, in my mind. If considering that we did choose 45.40 for that $5 of intrinsic value, you can absolutely place a stop around $5. Once we do cross that, it's all kind of up to you. Everyone's a different kind of trader. Everyone's going to have their different strategies. Personally, for me, I like waiting for target just because of what you see happens in the last 3 to 4 minutes before we do hit target. We gain more than $2 on the contract in one candle as we started crossing 40. And there actually wasn't even an output for 45.40 because we dropped so quickly because of the nature of speed, because it is OPEX. And having that experience and watching how it moves, it really is like a magnet. And that is why, in my mind, it makes speed a little bit easier to understand than gamma, because so long as you know the conditions necessary for when speed will be accurate, all you have to remember is that it's a magnet. To sum up, knowing when to utilize speed is just as important as how to utilize speed. So ideally, what you're going to want to see is lower VANA or higher volatility, and you're also going to want to be as close to OPEX as possible in order to be more confident in our target strikes hitting, right? So it's just going to be stronger and stronger the closer to expiry that we get. There's certainly multiple strategies to be built around just speed alone, in my opinion. You can use it as a scalper, you can use it as a target trader, and if you remember from the morning, we had that range of 40 to 60. You can absolutely use it to build spreads around. In its simplest form, as mentioned, it is a magnet. And so in my mind, picking a strike for a minimum of $5 in the money, you are always going to guarantee yourself $5 of intrinsic value, especially if you are looking to cash settle. If you are more of a scalper or a sniper, with your entries and exits, you can definitely pick the target strike. And honestly, those contracts will bring you a higher percentage return. But personally, I would recommend, closing those before the end of the day as they go at the money or in the money, rather than trying to cash settle them. That is why I like to, as mentioned, that is why I like to pick that $5 of intrinsic value if I am aiming to cash settle. Here's a quick peek at those sources I was discussing in the beginning. The Know Your Weapon series by Espen Gardner Hogg is pretty fantastic. I highly recommend it. And then Sheldon Natenberg in his book Option Volatility Pricing, Advanced Strategies and Techniques also has some fantastic information in there. So that is going to bring this to a close. Thank you all so much for giving me 15 minutes to go over this, for giving me 15 minutes of your day to listen to this. If you have any questions about this, I'm in the Discord most of the day, again by the name of Fatty. Thanks again, guys. Have a great night.